Welcome, everyone. Peace and love from Atlantean consciousness. This is Grandmaster Dr. Thor Templar, your voice of gnosis in a pock-ridden, filth-infested outhouse of a reality. We are your only voice of truth. I'm going to cover a very important area. I mean, this is really critical for people who are trying to understand so many things and know what is real and what is not real. Those seeking truth for their own personal benefit and not letting other ones somehow lead you down the path to oblivion. And there's so many people out there that are so uneducated, so ignorant, yet they are trying to take an awful lot of money from you, or they're sucking you into their abyss of evil. That is really sad. And, what we're going to cover today is a very critical subject. And, what is magical energy? How does it manifest? How does that connect with other energies? There's a huge confusion out there of what magical energy is. What is it made up of? In common science and in occult energy science. And as much as everybody thinks that this world is ran on scientific fact, well, it really isn't, especially when it comes down to so many New Age healers, New Age products, New Age other things, all the things that we consume all the time and go out there and read these ads on, and people who are getting quite wealthy from it. I mean, there may not be much money in occultism per se, particularly magical occultism, but there certainly is a lot of money in New Age. I mean, the tachyon people have sold over 5 million tachyon products, probably the largest selling New Age products ever. There's an Orgone, the African Orgone company, or whatever it is I ran into several weeks ago, claims to have sold 300,000 Orgone trinkets. I'm assuming that they've made a good penny there, especially in economies that it's easy to live on at low amounts of money. So, and Mr. Tachyon Boy must have made a fortune. Tachyons are very expensive, and the process may be unique and interesting, but it is very cheap to make all the products that he has. You put whatever that product is in a device that he has that somehow makes them attractors or antennas to tachyons. There isn't much going on there. Taking a glass little thing the size of a quarter couldn't cost more than a penny. Probably if you order hundreds, they're even less than that. So there's certainly a lot of money in it for a lot of different products. There are people out there selling very expensive machines, particularly these radionic Orgone machines that sell for several $1,000s. And I'm not necessarily sure there's anything particularly wrong with that, or if you have the money to buy them. I mean, people buy all sorts of stuff for thousands and thousands of dollars. And, I've always said this, anybody who's been involved in golf and everything else, I mean, it costs a fortune to do that, and a lot of people are doing it. Clubs aren't cheap. You can spend $300-400 a weekend just on green fees. And if you're a member, you spend a lot more. And then you go to the bar, you do all the other things, and there's always the new ball, the new club, the new training, the new this, the new that. So, to think that somehow this is outrageous, these junk products. Well, people have a right to spend money on anything they want. And there's certainly a lot of things out there that are much more than that. I mean, you can buy a cheap, virtually worthless radionic machine, but it is interesting as a psychic crutch for $100-150. You can get some machines $200-300. I mean, that's not too bad to have a little toy, a little psychic tool to play with. I mean, really, in the picture of what the cost is out there, it's pretty damn cheap. It's amazing when you see the prices of different things. I'm always staggered. Well, why is this worth that? So it's basically based on a certain amount on the cost of the product, but a lot of what the market will bear. Why is that? So there's certainly nothing wrong with that. But if you're really seeking, as the guild seeks, for gnosis, truth, and that just isn't some philosophical well-being. Oh, I know truth.
Oh, I feel full. Isn't that nice? I can now rest in peace because I know truth.
Well, that's really not what gnosis is about. The bottom line is having gnosis means that you know the truth is, meaning when you use something, you know that a hammer hits a nail in. Having that truth is very functional in your life. If somebody gives you a screwdriver and says,
oh, this is a hammer, and all the scientists agree with me,
and I invented it, I tested, I know it works, you buy it. Well, that's what a lot of the New Age products are doing. They're giving you screwdrivers and telling you they're hammers, and you're just buying into it. So I mean, that's, if you're going to spend money on and invest in either supplements or some sort of machine that assists you, does it work and is it doing the job it's supposed to and helping you in the area it should help you, instead of just being valueless junk like so many supplements are that sell for very high prices, but there really is nothing in them of the substance they claim there is. And this is a real problem, or it's mixed with so much other crap. Yeah, they give you a drop full of that, and the rest of it's all sorts of garbage, which is very typical of supplements as well. So, being in a gnosis state would know which ones are good or not, and then you check them to verify that. Or someone else assists you and say, well, this is good stuff, and that's what the guild's all about, because we know how to do all this. There is some sort of life energy meter out there that we have just recently obtained and are going to be testing. So there are certain tools that you can test things with. So, all these energies aren't as nebulous as they appear. There are ion meters where you can test if ions are coming from something. Negative ions everybody claims are so great. And of course you can test this meter that's coming out. And of course there's pendulums. Then there's the effects on life, and all this testing can be done. But you also need to know what the energies are. Now, people talk about energies out there, and it's thrown around like this, and people talk about the very popular, and then they group it all together. Orgone, chi, prana, all that stuff, which I'm not sure can be all thrown together, but let's throw them together for the time being. So this is life force energy. This is what sustains and empowers life. And let's say we all agree with that. Well, how does that assist in manifesting? So you put life force energy into a machine that empowers a thought form. Well, how does that help? So a thought form is informational data, basically. So there's no way you can do that, and we've used tachyons for years, and we put them in machines and everything else, and we've done wrong there too. Tachyons don't empower magical energies. They don't work whatsoever. And it's the same thing like Orgone does not empower magical energies. Not even a tiny bit, because magical energies are not based in life force. Life force is life force. Magical manifestation, informational energy fields are completely different. So what are you empowering there? It doesn't make any sense at all. So, people need to understand the difference between what are life force energies, what are energies, and what are occult energies. And there was a person who discussed, I was reading some book on Wilhelm Reich, who had discussions with him, and he said he used to talk about Reich about, there's a difference between energy and life force energy. And apparently Reich agreed with that, because how can you not agree with that? So, there's a difference between energy that is empowering your life, and you could say even that minute quantities of electrical energy have been used to assist or pumped into the body. Now, generally it has to be very low energy to get any effect. Tends to be assist in those areas of helping stimulate your life force. But that is not life force energy. You can then take crude, strong electricity, and it'll kill you. That's what electrocution is. There's a difference between energy and life force energy. I've never heard of anybody being killed by prana or chi. There are some cases, supposedly, of the Kundalini opening. Sounds like an Italian. Hey, Italian dessert. You want some Kundalini after? Hey, give me some Kundalini. But there are cases, supposedly, where that surge of energy went through the body at such a strong stage that it actually went up and killed that person because it was But again, this is not really life force in itself. It was stored energy, stored life force within the body that was amplified and so forth. So the fact of killing somebody with the use of prana or chi is just not really a viable situation. So how does that at all key into everything else? Well, if you're using a vessel to use or to create manifesting energies, well, obviously, since it comes through, if you're empowered, you then empower that or able to create better of those energies. So you wouldn't use that to empower it directly, you'd be empowering the operator. Now that makes sense, and that's something that we are developing as a proper procedural use of all radionics and psychotronic machines. So, but if you don't do that, you're wasting your time in terms of that, putting energy into a machine. And, we've done endless research, and I've started a whole bunch of recent research, and it gets to be more and more befuddled nonsense that you read in every single radionic book out there. And you have to wonder about even the mental state of these people who write down these almost well-written technical books that say absolutely nothing but repeat garbage from somebody else that knew nothing there as well. So to somehow think that Orgone is, and it is not really chi, it is not pure, it's a big problematical thing. You're condensing energy from where? If you draw in chi through Qi Kung practices, you are filtering it to some extent. It's going into your body, which again is filtering it and taking out the bad stuff and not taking in a lot of the bad. If you just randomly take thing in from an Orgone accumulator, and that's what they are. You don't make Orgone, you don't generate Orgone, you accumulate it. That came from the inventor, not from, yeah, I know, I invented it at the $2,000. They will tell you what it is. Pay me money. I'm Austrian. So the whole idea is that kind of boobalicious nonsense, which has picked your pocket for years if you bought that crap, has gotten you nowhere. So if you believe in stupid technologies applied in even stupider manners, then you're at the other spectrum of gnosis. You're not even not knowing. You have not known the truth. You're in stupid land. And that's dangerous for you and the planet. So, with these things, we need to understand the fact that what these energies are. Now, there's a term that's been bandied around, which I've recently just started researching yet again, and I've always wondered what these terms meant in the past and did some research which I had forgotten. But people talk about this, and every single product out there now is using the term scalar energy, scalar waves. And I don't think anybody really knows what scalar waves are. I had to look it up and try and figure it out myself. And, they use this, and you see this particularly talked about in radionic devices and so forth. And is this scalar wave? And what is a scalar wave compared to a chi wave? Compared to an occult energy wave. And there's three different things there, and we'll cover that. There's that life force energy, which I just talked about, and it's strictly life force. It is not occult in any manner whatsoever in terms of carrying occult information. It's life force energy. Now, that's what chi is, but that's not what the condensing, then there's regular energies. It's just energy. It doesn't necessarily have to empower life. It's just an energy force, and we're not sure how that empowers are working. But there's this chi force that is there that all living matter draws off of. and survives as part of the energy field of this. And it gets into so many areas which I'm not going to get here. There are just crude energy. So I guess there's basically actually four. There are just crude. It's just energy, as he said. It's like electricity. That is energy in a very crude and dangerous form that has to be properly channeled to be used. If you just stick a screwdriver in your light socket, you're going to find out how much energy electricity really is. And when they take your burnt carcass away, you can think, well, that ain't positive energy. No, it kills you. That's energy. There's nothing life-affirming about it. And whether portions of it can use to make a life-affirming energies because it goes through a machine or used in tiny bits, well, those are all things to talk about. Then there are scalar waves. Now, let's talk about scalar waves because this is the key. Everything out there, it's got scalar waves. This is the... And, of course, they use this term because it's such a nebulous, completely unproven wave. This gets into the occult and psychic realm, which is what a lot of occult energies are half, or maybe we're still trying to figure out how much they are, but they could be as high as 80 to 90% scalar in nature. Now, scalar means a field of information. It's an informational field, meaning it's a field of energy that carries information. So this means that it actually affects something else, but it has no energy to it whatsoever. So if you can comprehend that and think about that for a minute, it is strictly information. But if information is received, it works upon that. Now, one way to kind of illustrate this, which I hope people can understand, is scalar is very much like getting a computer program. I mean, the program is basically just information. It's totally worthless unless you put it in a computer. And a computer is the energy that goes in and uses that field of energy, that software program, which is why they call it software. It's just information. The computer then takes that, uses it, and creates something out of it. So to say that the software is worthless is ridiculous. It's filled with information, and if you don't have software in your computer, it's a box of wires of nothing. It's worthless. But the information field has to affect something, so it has to go into something or go into something. So if you were to send a scalar field of information to any living matter, or any matter whatsoever, that information is going to go into that matter, and it's going to change it on the most deepest level. So it increases energies. You can have an informational field that goes to a field of corn and tells it to grow better. And if you do that, if you send a scalar field of that information to one crop and not to the other, the ones that get that informational energy, that field, that wave, grow much bigger than the other ones. But there's no energy involved. It's not like we got to hook up a big giant motor to it and shoot it out there. Well, no, it doesn't work like that. And actually, when you start getting into empowering scalar fields by using too much energy or using the wrong energized scalar waves, you hurt it and destroy it. Now, the one thing that is very interesting about scalar waves, and they did this, and scalar waves are is what a lot of psychic projection is made out of, is that there is nothing that blocks it. It penetrates everything. So you can build a 50-foot wide walls, 50 feet of lead, stick it in the middle of the earth, and a scalar field will be able to go there and penetrate that. It is unstoppable. So these informational fields will go there and penetrate anything. So they're not affected by electromagnetics. They're not affected by anything. Which is why these fields are so adaptable to using light beam technologies, i.e. lasers, and work so well with that. So scalar fields are plain information, and that's how people look at it. And there is no need for, or want, or even desire from a lot of scalar field people to want to amplify that or put energy with it, and it is claimed that it may be detrimental to the field. Well, we disagree. Now, an occult field is an informational field. That's right. When you do a spell and you send energy to somebody, you're sending them an informational, scalar, empowered field, and that's where occultism differs, is that occultism energizes that through unusual and other scalar informational fields. So while one scalar informational field has this info in it, well, in magic, you're sending additional scalar wave fields that are telling those fields and how to work better and faster. It's a combination field which has an energetic, measurable nature to it, and combines a whole different field of energies and electromagnetics and all these things to a degree. So the difference between these fields are very critical to understand and how they work. So when you're producing energies, you're not producing them in a crude fashion in terms of sending energies out through this electromagnetic spectrum. You're using scalar waves which penetrate and go everywhere, filled with information. And of course, being all substances, biological or not, living or not, are made up of informational fields. So when you push information in of one field into another, they suck up that information like they suck up life force, and they act upon that, and that's how the fields work. But it makes sense. It's not about transferring energy. And this is where everyone has to be clear. It's about transferring informational fields. So, you can hook up an electrical generator to anything. That's going to not make it any better. You're pumping all this electrical energy in there. And even if you punched in all this Orgone or chi into something, it's not carrying any information with it other than life force information. So how that is not going to help a magical type energy spell, it needs a informational field to go with it. And of course, the amusing part is, as usual, we go back in this circle again. Science understands that occultism is right, because occult has always been sending informational fields to people, and they've been penetrating through everything. Nothing stops a magical projection ritual per se. You can counter it, you can block some of these energies magically again, but you're using one field against the other to neutralize it, if you're expert enough. But generally, you are projecting a field at someone or something that it easily penetrates anywhere in the universe. So if you had a picture of the society on Exu Abalon 12, and you had a picture of that, you could then project energy to that, or an informational or scalar field, and affect them even if they're 3 trillion light years away. And that's how scalar fields work. So it's an informational field, and the question is how do you create these scalar fields? How do you get them projected to the goal? And this again is where all sorts of other things come in, and it's hard to say how much of this, and you need some way of projecting it. Obviously your mind, thought form, is one way of projecting. That's the energy used to project a scalar field, and you do this with the assistance of candles and oils. They're all creating scalar fields, informational fields, not energy fields in terms of just energy. They're not life force fields. You're not generating life force to grow something. You're creating a data field of information. So if you want to uncross someone, you're sending them a data field to remove the negativity that's in their other occult body fields. And if you want to draw someone to you, you're using a drawing field for that, or prosperity. It's an informational field that you're putting around yourself that then causes an interaction within you and the world around you. And of course, isn't that interesting? Because that exactly explains how magic works. So if you are looking to be successful or prosperous in a particular business, you need to create those fields around you. So you create these success energy fields around you by creating an informational data field, a scalar field, which is then projected at a particular target through the scalar process. So no matter where they are, they're going to be affected by it unless they've done some fairly advanced protection or other things to block these kind of energies. And in most cases, you're not trying to block this energy. If you're not successful, you're trying to fill your computer yourself with data fields of success so that they then can work in your life, and that informational field is now in there, and your body says okay, or your consciousness, whatever you want to call it, your occult energy fields basically are now this magnet. They have this information in there because they send the information that you now are to act, to think, and become 100% part of the success process. So all sorts of things happen to you. All the positive energies, or all the energies in your environment that you need to connect with and draw to you to bring success in your life, these informational fields have done that. So I mean, that's pretty much the explaining it. But to think that, well, you're going to orgone this energy, it's just absurd that you're empowering with life force energy a occult energy field is nonsense. It doesn't work like that. So, and as I said, in the occult energies, you do empower these scalar fields. And that's the difference between people who are just transferring information and empowering things by using other scalar fields to affect the scalar fields, and using some primitive but subtle energy forms to empower these scalar fields. So these informational data goes out there, and an occultist empowers it, just doesn't send the information out there. And in this way, you start getting much more dramatic effects that you could normally not. So, you can't really just project a life force energy to think that that is an energy that nurtures and grows. And there may be some minor effects it has, but to try and use life force to empower a scalar information field doesn't make sense, because it's apples and oranges there. So you have to empower, through the scalar process, informational ways, not life force, because it doesn't make any sense, as I said. You know, life force and life energy affects you to a particular way and starts affecting on a much more physical basis, as prana and chi and these other things encompass your body. You're getting a lot of physical effects, and you're getting very much energy, raw energy. You're not really getting informational data fields. You're getting general life force energy, and of course, if these things are used through the body and moved around like chi and other things, they have a curative effect because you're just energizing the entire body. And by doing that, the body is performing where it should be, where in the past it wasn't. But it's not getting an informational field. You're not telling, when you send chi to your liver if you have liver problems, you're not telling the liver directly to heal. You're stimulating your entire body, and those weaker organs are stimulated and then are affected by putting more energy into that. But you're not really telling it to heal. You're stimulating it, and that's very much different than sending a particular data field to someone to react in a way or to attract certain energies to them. But if you don't empower these fields, particularly in magical circles, which you have to come up against huge blockages and problems and all the other potential active energies that are there, spirits and all the other things, you need very strong data fields that not only carry information, but carry energetic fields with them that will interact through the data process to affect these areas and these spirits and these entities. So that's very important. So when you get something that is powered by this, that's supposed to do something. Now, tachyon products in general are geared towards the amplification, the stimulating of physical body energies. There isn't really anything that I've seen on the main only credible tachyon site, which we have a link to and that I use frequently, that has anything to do with carrying information per se. I mean, there are tachyons that are supposed to affect different areas of the body and charged items, but basically what you're doing is the same thing with the chi aspect, is that you're empowering the healing aspects of the body in general, and these energies obviously are going to go to and clear out those problematic areas first. I mean, if you empower a healthy body, it's not going to use any of that energy. And whatever energy it does take in, it's going to move to the area of the body that it needs. So that's going to be a process that happens naturally. There's no informational field with that per se. But when you're doing very complicated occult science additions and changing and removings of energies and dealing with energetic entities, you need not only information, you need energetic fields that do something as well. These are not life force fields. They are data fields and occult energy fields. It has nothing to do with life force. If you want to make stronger psychic functionings, if you want to make stronger occult rituals, you empower your physical system to make sure your chakras are working more powerfully, your third eye is more energized. All these things, if by using life force energies, if you use them physically on yourself, will empower you, the main tool out there. And everybody wants to, for some reason, everybody thinks that they are just garbage and that everything is something else or some spirit or some. No, you are the main channel. You are the main everything. Everything has to come through you. You have to be the source of things. And the reason why so many things don't work so well is because you are such a poor model and so much dependent on someone else. We want machines to do everything. Well, machines are worthless if they're not properly programmed. And machines are like magic. They're supposed to assist you, not work for you. Meaning they put you out of the picture. So the whole basis of the way these things are done, and particularly these new versions that have come out in these last years being empowered by all these different things, and particularly this organized scam, is all nonsense, and it doesn't work like that. Now, the people of the past who built radionic machines didn't go into all that goofy nonsense. Most of their machines were pretty primitive. They were just strictly flow pattern machines, meaning they had potentiometers hooked up to wires, and there really wasn't much there, and that went to some sort of amplifier, usually audio in nature. And from there it went all over the place, and there really wasn't any cosmic empowerment. There certainly wasn't any Orgone machines that had dials on it. Nobody even considered using that stuff or to empower these things in any other way like that. There's a great misunderstanding of what all these things are, but it really came down to anyone who ever built any radionic type machines in the history of the area of study, or the quote industry. I don't know if you can call it an industry, but every one of these have basically in the end come out and said that, it's not the machine whatsoever. The machine is just kind of a crutch that everybody uses, and this is a way of channeling the energy. Now, there's nobody has really come down and said this machine works this way. Some have said this a little more than others. Hieronymus was more into that. But, they're using, most of the time when it comes down to any of these things, and all of the people have all ultimately said it doesn't work, from Copeland to Tansley to all the other ones, Malcolm Ray. When you look at their stuff, it's a joke. A real joke. I mean, there's nothing there. Drown was the same way when it came into that. And, of course, and Abrams produced many of these joke machines and then filled them up with gunk so you couldn't figure out what was in them, even though his original premise was a very complicated way of reading people that apparently didn't work very well, because when associates of his were tested, they seemed to have failed terribly. So if we're going to build magical occult field energy machines, we need to know the nature of what we're using to begin with. So, there has to be an understanding of that if there is any value to chi, orgones, and tachyons, then how are they supposed to empower this entire process? Just pumping life force into a machine that really doesn't accept it, use it, or even assist the process is kind of stupid. Not kind of stupid, it is. It's a special kind of stupid. But and then hawked this stuff. And apparently a lot of ignorant people were sold on this really stupidity, that there's something there and that you can actually condense cosmic energies in through this ridiculous Orgone process that, if done by the inventor properly, would takes huge multi-layered machines of several hundred layers. To think that you're going to put a bunch of ground up shit together in a tiny little pyramid and that this is going to produce anything of great nature is ridiculous, and doesn't work. And we are certainly going to test these things if there really is anything. Now, does this actually put anything out? Well, I hope it does do something, but I mean, it doesn't really make any sense when you get down to the actual scalar fields that make everything happen. Informational fields are different than energy fields, which is all these things were. And so these energy fields are going to have only minor effects. So life force is life force. Energy, data fields are completely different. And occult energy fields are a different field entirely. And then, of course, there's just raw energy. It's the four fields, but we can ignore the raw energy. But there's three basic occult energy fields. And that's life force fields, scalar fields, which are basically the transfer of data, of information that is then acted upon by the matter it is transferred into, and occult energy fields, which are data fields which are highly amplified and have added occult energy fields into them, which actually carry measurable energy. Now, you can't measure scalar fields. You can't measure the data in them, and because they have no energetics to them. There's no energy with them, so you can't. It's just simply information. It's just like that computer program was talking about. It's just a chip. It's just a program, and however that comes to you on a CD or DVD, it's just it. And you wouldn't say there's any energy in this at all. What would you say a DVD is? It's a data disk. It has data, it has information on it. So there's no way you can test that with every single piece of equipment known to man. You'll never find any energy with it. It's not designed to have energy. It's a data carrying. But that is a limitation of a scalar field. If there isn't an energetic factor to it, and you can't hook up crude energies to it, you just can't put electrical energy through a data field, a scalar field, and get better results with that. It doesn't work that way. You have to have an intricate combining of occult energy technologies to empower and energize a scalar field to make it work to the high level it needs to. And that's not just adding life force in, because life force itself is designed to go through individuals, not through dead substances. Chi is not generated or used by something that's dead. We talk about chi and prana and everything else, and what does that all have in common? It is that it affects energetic substances that live off of that ultimately. Because you could ultimately say, in the end, you are living off of prana and chi because you are eating that in a plant. Now, you could say, well, it's all the chemical makeup, but people are living off of pure energy because that's all that everything boils down to anyway. It comes down to the fact it's not the plant, the chemicals in it, it's the energy that you get from it. But that doesn't change anything. That just makes a particular energetic structure stronger. It's not carrying any information other than assisting the whole growth pattern. That's where occult fields come in, because occult fields are the scalar fields, all this data which you need, all this information that's going to trigger effects in something, but that's not good enough if you really want to get occult results. It may be good enough for some little practitioner or some health guy. It's not good enough for an occultist who has to create prosperity, health, get rid of negative spirits, remove curses, take care of past life problems. You're not going to do that with an intrinsic data field like the SE5 people like to talk about. You're not going to do that with a scalar field alone. Not going to do that with just information. It has to go into the occult energy field. It has to produce energies to affect that information that you sent there, or it's just going to go in there and sit. And generally, if there's a blockage, those data fields, while they may penetrate, and it really doesn't matter if it gets to its target. Let's say you wanted to shoot a missile at something and blow it up. Well, if the missile goes to the target, hits it, and goes clunk, just bounces off, well, who cares? It didn't work. It didn't penetrate the target. It didn't explode. Or even if, let's say, the missile hits the target and it explodes and it has no effect, well, it doesn't have any value there. And that's the difference between, these very typical data fields that are used in basic healing, data fields that are used for very simple things, and the advanced occult science data field would carry all this additional energy to make things happen. And then, of course, there's just life force energy. It just vitalizes the life force, and if you pump that energy into a system that isn't working right, the system will take the energy and it will move it to wherever it needs. It's like taking a medication that affects a particular part of your body. Well, how does the body know? You take a pill, it goes into the stomach. Well, it goes to that particular area. But it affects your whole body. It still goes through your kidneys, it goes through your heart, it goes through everything. It just tends to, but they don't use the energy as much. They may be affected by it somewhat, but it goes to the particular organ that needs it, and that uses it and is affected by it. But there's a huge difference there that nobody seems to quite understand. So you don't just go empowering something with tachyons that are occult energy fields. There's nothing there. There's no data. Doesn't make any sense. And you can't use that energy to empower thought forms or magical energy. You need to have a scalar field that then is produced by that. So these energies actually are conflicting and don't really help the process. They should be used on the operator and not in the machine directly. As a general rule. Now, this can, in some ways, by creating different energies, but they have to be scalar in nature to use in a machine or use in a magical ritual. Just using chi or prana does absolutely nothing. And we've seen what that does for health. We've seen what that does for chi, how you can strengthen yourself, cut yourself with swords and all the things that go with that. But it doesn't work. It's not a data field. It's a life energy field. and that needs to be clearly understood. So I hope everyone understood that and understood how these energies work, because it's very important and very critical in understanding what someone is doing. So people will talk about scalar fields anywhere, and they make all sorts of stuff now that are so-called scalar fields, which means they're transferring positive information, and it's the ion thing. They put out all these negative ions, which are supposed to be so good for you, and of course the Schumann resonance, which is supposed to be good for you as well. Well, all these things are nebulous in terms of what they really produce and their effects on everything, and the Schumann resonance, like everything else, like Orgone itself, original interesting Orgone that Reich was working with, and of course we really don't have any idea how well any of that stuff worked because of the persecution, is all very interesting. But the use of these energies now in an occult fashion and trying to harness them to amplify in machines is something that's been created in the last 10 to 15 years, maybe 20 years, and really has no basis in science. And people are way off the mark on how they're using this. And it's the reason why none of this really technology works much. And it's so silly to think that some of these very simplistic devices are stopping huge cell phone towers and cleaning up all those toxic streams in the sky. I mean, it's absurd to think that these tiny little devices are able to do that. And you never really see any before and after pictures on any of these things. It's all the same old nonsense that tends to be perpetrated there of, this works like this, but it isn't. And, Reich said not to use copper, not to use plastic. And that's what all these things are made of, because they're readily available in your local home club. I mean, all this stuff is ridiculous. Or holy hand grenades that stop so-called aliens with a tiny bit of orgone in them. Yeah, somebody comes from billions of light years away and a little bit of orgone stops them. And that's supposed to relate to, the point is when Reich supposedly affected flying saucers and their propulsion system, he was using very powerful cloud-busting technology to do that. Not some little 2 or 3 little rods of copper which you were only supposed to use. But I guess they'd never read his work either. So the whole idea of that if you want to achieve something in life, if you want to get results, if you want to know what the truth is, then you have to be armed with the proper information so you can figure out how to get results. If you listen to idiots who live in a dream world, who seem to be only interested in picking your pockets, they're not really interested in any way of actual getting results, and are never tested, never have test results to produce, then you follow these fools, and I don't know if they feel happy producing nothing and are able to think they're doing something, like the shallow little losers they are. But this is very typical of all these people out there producing so many different junk devices out there. So it's really sad. And if someone thinks that they have something, and you can prove to me that you have results of any tool or that you have, well, provide them to me. We're more than happy. We're seeking truth. If you have something to work, we will help you. We will bring customers to you. We will get your technology out there, and we will prove it that it works. But you're going to have something that works. And we're not here to be negative. We want your technology to work, and we'll do everything possible to make it work. But, we need proof of these things. Don't tell me that while you're selling something, and that's such simple little things, and a knot like this, and a twist of a coil. Oh, come on. There's virtually no proof that any of this stuff works whatsoever, particularly the modern junk out there. Apparently, Reich did some interesting tests and was even able to make it rain. Now, why aren't these things repeated, and why aren't people making it rain in these areas that need water? And you don't necessarily have to say that you did it, but it would be interesting to just see that. Yet none of this ever happens, and we all know the legal problems to these things, but you never can get any actual research and proof that hardly anything's been done whatsoever. So seeking truth, getting answers, and the bottom line is getting results, because that's what truth is all about. It works or it don't. So with that, there is no reality until the occult scientist creates it. Question everything, believe nothing, question all authority, trust absolutely no one. Learn it, do it, be it, and let the guild be your guide.